6 metres out.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Right, we're on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What I'm just going to do is just address a question that I had from Mark about some of the boobies and fabs that people use. But of course, early season, certainly I had good fun. I'm sure quite a lot of you did have good fun fishing the washing line with a booby on the point and a couple of buzzers or dollbacks or cormorants on the droppers. My favourite fly of the year for the droppers was, I covered this in a previous fly tying, were buzzers, either with a metal rib, either red rib or silver rib. But this year, the feature that the fish really liked was the orange dot fluorescent UV resin on the thorax. And I would say 90% of the fish I caught on buzzers this year, the fly had actually got an orange dot thorax, which is kind of weird. It's just how it works sometimes. Whereas in previous years, I've done really well with that orange mirage tinsel type of stuff. So those are the buzzers I've been using, and I had no need to change. For the first time I can remember, one of my top buzzer patterns was a fairly standard one, which was black buzzer, but it had got a natural quill rib rather than a metal rib. And those quill buzzers this year really did work for me early season, particularly in a size 14. The other buzzer that worked was a yellow owl buzzer, so primrose yellow fly tying silk body, and I ribbed it with a black what I think one fly tying company called a nymph rib, but it's basically a black flat tinsel, so it wasn't holographic or anything, just a black flat tinsel, and that worked as an alternative pattern. So I just fished those buzzers all year. I think the odd thing this year, for me certainly, was how few fish I caught on fabs or blobs. If I was fishing a washing line, I would be fishing with a booby rather than a fab most of the time. Whereas in previous years, some of the fabs had really worked well. So just a few of my favourite either blob or fab patterns for the washing line. I think many of us have got various pink and yellow fab patterns that we've used. That's one of my favourites, which is a watermelon pink, it's called, with a yellow rear. And then there's one of the Bar brothers has a pattern which has got a very pale pink front end.
That's crows, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is a really good alternative. Stephen won one of the evening matches on the reverse of that, which was yellow at the front and pink at the back. One of my favourites, that's one of the pink ones that I've done. One of my favourites, I haven't got the actual full pattern here, is the biscuit and either sunburst or biscuit and yellow. But I find that this particular shade of biscuit from Flybox outfishes any other that I've ever tried by a considerable margin. I don't know why, but some of the others are a more corally colour, but that particular shade I find fantastic. And so if I'm fishing a biscuit fab, it's always that one. And so I've picked out, I can't remember whether it's 5 or 6 colours here of Fritz, translucent Fritz that I would not want to be without. Obviously the orange, to do either an orange or an orange and pink. There's the watermelon. I would want some kind of yellow, it doesn't matter which. My other favourite colour is the blushing sunburst, and then there's that really pale pink. My best fab of last year was a combination of these two. It was the blushing sunburst at the front and that watermelon at the rear, or a shocking pink at the rear. And there were some days where I was getting well into double figures of fish from the bank on a washing line, but something like 7 or 8 out of 10 fish would be taking the fab. And it was frustrating that I got my best buzzers on the line, fish were completely ignoring them for something that was already shocking pink and orange, ridiculous. But those are the different ones that I would regularly use. And I'd love it if other people kind of shared any other colour combinations that they thought were useful. That if anybody's got any other ones, but those are my main ones. Biscuit, pink and yellow, yellow and pink, sunburst and pink. Those are the ones I'll go to straight away.
Foam tail in yours?
Yes. This one here, you'll see that I've got a 5mm foam tail in that one. But of course, again, because I'm obsessive compulsive, I have fabs, so no weight. I've got 5mm, and I even have some which have got 7mm diameter foam rear. The ones I call a Kim Kardashian because they've got a big foam arse. Those float so much that if you cast one out on a floating line or even on a midge tip, it just hangs upside down in the surface and won't shift. And I've actually had people, I've had trout come up and take it almost like a dry fly. But if you want the washing line to be really close to the surface, floating line with fluorocarbon to just get the droppers under, and then a Kim Kardashian at the far end, and you're fishing right in the surface, and no problem. Yeah. When I fished the club matches this year, most of the time I've had an absolute nightmare. But the spring pairs match, Stephen and I won, and the two flies that were just deadly on the day with these two, and I'm going to tie one of these. Early on in the season, I'd been fishing at Toft with a standard gold humongous booby, and I'd caught a fish on that, and Lee Henfrey came down to just check tickets and check everybody was all right, and he said, why don't you tie the humongous with yellow eyes rather than black eyes, because there's some people refer to it as a shuggy, but a humongous with yellow eyes or chartreuse eyes. So anyway, the following a few days later, I tied this fly, yellow-eyed gold humongous. I never stopped catching on it for the next 5 or 6 weeks. It was just
an intermediate line, or is it?
that was on, mostly intermediate. Yeah, that there was one day which was absolutely flat calm, where hardly anybody caught, and I was fishing on boats or bank because it was just so bright and flat. And I fished a clear intermediate at the Swan's Nest with that fly on, and I landed 5 on that, and it was just deadly compared with, everybody was struggling to get any kind of bite.
Basically, it's about 3 foot down, wasn't it?
Yeah. I lost that particular fly on a double figure pike, same day. Yeah, just completely bit it off. But the other fly that worked really well on the day was this, which is the sparkler, and I've experimented quite a lot with this to get it right, because sometimes I've done a sparkler and it just hasn't worked at all, but I found a combination that I was really happy with, so that's the one I'm just going to share with you today as the last fly. So it's yellow-eyed, so meeting that kind of trigger point thing again. And just like normal, this is actually a 6mm piece of foam. So normally what I do is one loose turn like that, a slightly tighter turn, but with the foam along the shank of the hook. Tighten that up, twist it round, and then do the figure of 8 to put it into place. And that is how I fix on the booby eyes. And then you've got a choice. You can either just lightly varnish it, where that makes that slightly loose still, but that makes it quite robust to take a few fish before the eyes start to get a bit distressed. But you can super glue them in at the risk of the fish biting the eyes off. That's your personal choice. So that's the eyes just tied in, and although those look quite big, this fly will certainly float really well for a washing line. And again, this is the competition heavyweight hook. This one happens to be the barbless one, and so yeah, just a size 10. The particular blend of sparkle that I found really worked well was this one, although there are obviously plenty of ones to choose from, but I found this just a lovely blend, and also quite fine fibres. So it's gold silver with a little bit of pearl in as well, by the looks of it, and this just creates the sparkle. So the first piece is obviously, this is a very simple fly to tie, obviously, but cut a length off of the blend of sparkle, tie that in, and I'm just going to leave that for the time being as it is. So that's quite simple. Now this Dave Downey Mini F Up Fritz, charming name, in black velvet, is one of the body materials that I've used, and this works really well. It's just very simple, and seems to be as effective as anything else. So this is just what I use as the body material, and as I say, I've tried various variations of it, and this has come out as one of the better ones. And all I'm doing with this is catching that in and running it the length of the hook. If you want to maximise the fluffiness of it, you just sort of pull the fibres back if you possibly can. And obviously that's quite a nice compact body. As it happens, I'd be quite happy to tie, using this material, a doll back with that material. Make a really nice straggly doll back, black doll back, just as one suggestion. So there we are, that's that material tied in. I'll just do a half hitch to secure that. Okay, there's a reason I haven't trimmed the tail yet. Okay, so the next thing is I'm going to tie in the wing. Sometimes I've tied in a little bit of marabou as well, but these days I just don't bother. I'm just going to select a bunch of fibres, not too many, but make sure that they're all the same length, or pretty much the same length. Cut those off, and then what I do is I put this along the top of the hook shank like that, so that I know it's kind of approximately matching with the tail, and then tie that down with 2 or 3 turns, but then fold the rest of it back again, so that you've got a double wing there. So you've tied it and then folded it back, and that's really settled in nicely. So I can now just go to the front of the fly, half hitch that secure, and then do a whip finish at the front. So that's all done. I'm just going to make sure that all of this now is secure with varnish, both on the eyes and then underneath. So that's all tied in. There we are. And now the only thing I do now is take all of the sparkle from both the tail and the wing, and I cut it to the length I want. So that's now all one, and that's worked out quite nicely. That's settled really nicely on the hook. So that's the sparkler.
Very good.
And that's just a lovely attractor pattern. And on the day where Steve and I won the spring pairs match, I think I had 2 on that and 5 on that. Yeah, on a clear intermediate line.
Good.